Let's slowly get started just with some announcements and things like that. Welcome everybody as a few more people filter in. I wanted to bring up, I wanted to talk about what's coming up with our petitioning. So typically as we head into primary season, the first thing that we do is help our endorsed candidates get onto the ballot. And that means literally carrying these long petitions. This year it might be longer than ever before, and getting signatures on those petitions. The number of signatures we need to get is reduced this year again because of COVID, but also so is the time frame that we need to do that in. And we need to do this in some way that's comfortable for everybody, and keeps everybody safe. So my intention is to try to do as much of this as we can outside at some tables along Grand Street on a couple of probably weekend days when we get some more traffic out there, as opposed to trying to knock on doors. We can also do some of that just in front of our own buildings as people are coming home, but people aren't coming home from things, so it's not really the same kind of timing that we used to have before. In any case, what I am going to be doing is sending out an email in the next couple of days asking people to sign up for to volunteer, and we will then together figure out kind of where that's going to happen and what we need to do about that.
Jeremy,
yeah,
it's 150 signatures. Is that correct?
For you guys?
Well, what's the maximum we need?
Yeah, I think the particular race we care about is probably district leader, and 150.
Or city council too. I mean, we care. Well, I mean, like, I guess it's like, right, everyone else is getting other signatures, so.
There are more people getting signatures, and there are candidates and campaigns also working on this in different places.
Right.
So the only race that we have sole responsibility for is probably district leader Carolyn and Lee. So that would be the minimum that we need to pick up.
The court case is over?
It was dismissed today. Arthur Schwartz, the lawyer, he's bringing an appeal, but he says that's a long shot. So it's too bad.
It's really too bad. It's kind of, I mean, it's genuinely amazing to me that over the last year, our representatives in Albany and our governor did not figure out a better way to do this, because all this really is sending people out to have connections that we shouldn't be having right now.
It's crazy.
It's really unbelievable. But I think if we do it at a table on the corner, we're not standing in front of somebody, we're not getting face to face with them, we have plenty of extra pens. I mean, I think there's a way we can do this that's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But it's really not a great situation for us. Nevertheless, I will be sending out an email asking for people to volunteer and help out with that. And you can help, you can help us figure out the right way to make this work and have it be done safely. We'll talk to some folks from campaigns who have already been going out and doing some, handing out palm cards and things. So there is some campaign activity already happening. There are definitely folks who worked on the census last year. So it's not unique. It's just really unfortunate. So we will try to figure that out. Carolyn and Lee, did you guys have any just any sort of district leader announcements before we get into the meat of our agenda?
I had a quick thing that maybe we can include in an email or something. It's more local than anything else. And if you live in Seward, you saw an email today, but Manny Cantor is looking for Cantonese and Mandarin speakers to help with a ranked choice voting outreach. And so if you or folks, you know, and they're casting a wide net for this. If you or folks, you know, are Mandarin and Cantonese speakers, there's a form to fill out. And I'm just going to drop my email in the chat just in case anyone doesn't have it, because you can send me an email directly, and I will put you in touch with Deb Scher, who's the wonderful outreach coordinator at Manny Cantor, and that's ongoing.
Okay, thanks.
And
Lee?
just to give everybody an update, I'm still working on trying to get our senior population, those that are shut-ins, access to vaccines, both the developments along Grand Street and those in Vladeck. And if anybody knows of folks who are shut-ins who have not been able to access or get help signing up, please reach out to me and I'll try to get them put together with people who can help sign people up or call in for appointments for vaccines.
So that's support to get the appointments. There's no widespread effort to actually bring vaccines to where people are? That's not possible.
Well,
So,
there was the city council hearing last week. I mean,
and we still don't have vaccines for the folks who are shut-ins. I did hear that the UJC is working on something. Again, I'm trying to get through to Gail Brewer right now on the community board meeting, if I'm able to ask for her help. Nydia Velasquez has offered help. I have been in touch with her office. We're working on getting sites down here. It's unfortunate, but for those that are the most vulnerable, at least we do have Manny Cantor, who is doing a lot of work trying to get lists of people so that as soon as vaccines are available, they're able to reach out. So we'll continue to work together.
Lee, I have a question about the vaccines. I'm just a little bit shy of 65 myself by a few months, but I have multiple risk factors that should qualify me, at least according to what's published on the web. But every time I go look on and try to sign up for anything online, I'm rejected because of not qualifying.
Is that private, like Rite Aid, CVS, as well as the state?
Both.
Both. Okay. Shoot me an email. I'll shoot you an email. We'll try to work on that because I know people who are just under the age, like you, who have been able to. So I'll shoot you an email.
Thanks.
And Seward Parks Management is pushing for this as well. They've offered the community room if they can do a pop-up site there. So everybody's ready for this if our leaders would send us something.
Okay, thanks. That's super helpful. Let's move into we've got a funny meeting tonight. We've got 1, 2, 3 different things going on that don't really relate to each other. So we'll see if we can make the transitions successful here. First thing we wanted to talk about, though, was a plan for the Lower East Side in Chinatown, devised by a group called the Chinatown Working Group several years ago now, right? At some point, 8, 9 years ago, I think this was first
I think
put
10.
out, 10 years ago. It's still incredibly relevant, and I think with a new administration in the city coming around, it's particularly relevant for us to be well versed in what these planning proposals are, and start as a club to have an opinion about where we where we stand in all of this. There are buildings going up all around us, some of which we're not happy about, some of which we're okay with, but to be able to sort of face that prospect with a certain philosophy and with a certain kind of policy bent, I think would be useful for this club to have, so that we can think about projects as they come as part of a broader scheme. So Marion's been so kind tonight as to invite some folks from Chinatown Working Group here to explain to us what their proposal is. And I'm hoping also then to have, we'll have time for questions and a full discussion. And I think some people in the room here who are not fully supportive of that plan. So we'll get to hear kind of the pros and cons of what's going on here. We've got Zishun Ning, Stephanie Cranes, and Briar Winters. I don't know if Briar's here. I don't.
Yes.
Yes. So do you guys want to take us through this for about 10 minutes? Do you have a way of presenting this that's a whole little piece that we can try to digest and then move into having a discussion about this?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us. I can start off, and then Stephanie and Briar can take up. And Marion, thank you also. And also, I think Marion also shared our website in the group chat. So anyone want to see more details about the plan, you can go to their website. It has a map that shows the boundary of the Chinatown Working Group plan. And just want to give you a little bit of background of this plan. So it was actually more than 10 years because it was the whole fight started in 2008 when the city passed the East Village rezoning that protect mostly middle class white area of the East Village, but excluded the Chinatown and the Lower East Side, and including the co-ops in the Lower East Side from protection against luxury high-rises. So that way, the city was able to divide, our community. Even though East Village, Chinatown, and the Lower East Side, we all belong to the same community board. So at that time, our community came up, rally to say, we should get the equal protection, right, as East Village. And then under the pressure, the city would, agree that, okay, you guys should form and come up with your own plan. And that's the gist of the Chinatown Working Group. And then at one point, the Chinatown Working Group had more than 60 organizations. We joined and then we crafted this plan. And a few components of the plan is that one is very important is the high restriction on any new developments. So that way to discourage any real estate speculations from coming in, and also it mandates that any new developments on the public land, which is Part B of this area on the Nitra property, to be 100% the low-income housing. That means that they look at the affordability level should reflect on those who have been staying in those areas. And also that in the rest of the area, besides the high restriction, it also calls for the truly affordable housing, that the same as what I meant before, to have the 50%. Usually, it depends on different areas, but a larger percentage of the housing that's truly affordable to the neighborhood. And as you can see in this map, certain area was left out, and some of the co-ops in these areas was also left out due to some historic reason of elected officials at that time. But now, since we are moving to a different period, and plus that CWG at that time did do a study of all this area and gave recommendations. So even though this map didn't show the recommended area, actually the area of the co-ops, actually we also look at that area and gave recommendation for protection. So we'll touch on that a little later. So without the CWG plan, all these years we have seen the impacts of displacement happening. A lot of eviction happening in Chinatown Lower East Side, and also the city tried to privatize NYCHA, the public land, and then also the in Area D where the waterfront, the Two Bridges neighborhood is in. You know, you have heard about the 4 mega towers being proposed, and then before that, the one Manhattan Square already came up 80 stories. So all of these was because, you know, we don't have equal protection as the East Village. So the plan came up to we proposed a plan to Mayor de Blasio, and he rejected the plan in 2015, saying that it was too ambitious. And then at the same time, he had no problem, you know, trying to approve the 4 mega towers. So it's very clear whose side he's on. And then, you know, the community from Chinatown to Lower East Side, we all came together, right? Actually, through all these years, we're finally push this plan. Actually, we're in a stronger position because, like Jeremy said earlier, actually people see, you know, now it's actually more urgent. And this plan actually become more and more relevant because seeing all these huge negative impacts, these luxury high-rises come in. So in a way, that, you know, the luxury high-rises, they come in, right? They drive up the rents and the real estate taxes. So whether you rent an apartment or you live in a co-op or you know, or you do a small business here, whether you mom and pop store for decades or you just come in, do a business, just open a business here, we all suffer, you know, from the lack of protection and the city's displacement agenda, you know. So I'll leave it here and see if Stephanie or Brian, you want to take it up from here.
Sure. I thought that was a good summary. And as Zishan mentioned a bit earlier, the plan obviously protects the neighborhood from overdevelopment, but it's also, so it helps to protect and preserve, but it also helps to develop the area in a way that is conducive to the community remaining in the neighborhood and being housed affordably in the neighborhood, because the housing that it does promote, the only housing it facilitates is housing that's actually deeply affordable to the community, not the fake affordable threshold that's used by the mayor under the mandatory inclusionary housing program. So instead of using the citywide area median income to determine affordability, the Chinatown Working Group plan uses the local area median income, which is really important, considering that the median income of the Lower East Side is not as high as the citywide AMI. So, so it's sometimes there is some criticism from certain voices that this plan is something that shows we're stuck in the past or we're afraid of change. But in reality, the plan is really for the future. It is a pro-development plan. It's just, it raises the question, development for whom? Development for the uber rich, development that lines the pockets of developers themselves, or development that's for the community that lives and works here. So that's something to note about the Chinatown Working Group plan.
And just to add on what Steph has said, right? Because we have seen, you know, also there's criticism, right, from some of these so-called affordable housing advocates that says that, oh, if you don't allow the neighborhood to build high, then you don't have affordable housing. But actually, that formula is wrong, because in order to build those so-called affordable housing under the Blasio administration, you have to get in much more, you know, many more luxury units. So you have to get like maybe 70% luxury units they will promise, right? But probably not actually even naturally to build a smaller percentage of affordable housing. And like we said earlier, this market rate unit will drive up the rents and the real estate taxes of the surrounding area. So going to massively destroy the existing affordable housing. So this is, what we call displacement, right? And actually, if you do the math, actually we under the de Blasio's plan, we lose more affordable housing than we create. So this plan is first and foremost an anti-displacement plan, is to try to reverse this trend, to say that we want to preserve the existing affordable housing, and if we are to create new affordable housing, those new affordable housing should be affordable, real affordable to the neighborhood. So that way we discourage the luxury real estate speculation to really have protect our neighborhood that way. And then so to also worth mention that upcoming city council election, and since you guys have been supporting the only candidate also that we are supporting, who are really at the forefront of advocating for passing the full Chinatown Working Group plan, because he also sees the necessity to unify the neighborhood, right? Both Chinatown and the Lower East Side need protection, and we are on the same front, the same struggle. So we also, happy the Chinatown Working Group actually was the first entity to endorse Chris Mate for City Council, and now that he's able to help push this issue forward, and now so that's why the displacement issue is really at the forefront at this point, and so yeah, we're also looking forward to have the GSD support, endorsement for this plan.
Can I ask you a couple of just sort of practical questions about what's going on here? So my first question is just, is your plan to get, is your hope to get this plan passed as zoning rules in the city council? Or is this something that gets implemented through the Department of Planning? Or is it simply the mayor's decision? What's the political mechanism for creating these special districts?
Politically, the mayor and the city council would have the say on this. So, as we mentioned earlier, right, because de Blasio has been on the side of the developers. That's why he thinks this plan is too ambitious. And then our local council member, Margaret Chin, actually followed de Blasio's lead to say, oh, yeah, this plan indeed is too big. So why don't we just pass a small part of it? And that way they're trying to replicate what the city did in 2008, which is to pit one community against the other. So, that's why we're really looking forward to the coming election. And of course, we continue to put pressure and use that to show that, whoever be the next city council member or the mayor, they should not be like Mayor de Blasio or Council Member Chin. And I think that has been the sentiment for many people, not just us, but, many across the city. So, we're hoping that, we by pushing this, once the next administration came in, then they will take a different approach to this plan. And of course, we are fighting to get the full plan to be passed.
Can I ask that whoever's sharing the screen to unshare it so we can see each other if we're going to have a conversation? This is also, if you go to the website, the URL that I put up in the chat, the plan is there, the map is there. There's also, and I really encourage people to look at this, there's recommendations for the areas that are not included in the map we just saw. And I asked about this, and so I've really done some homework and reading about that. So I also encourage people to look at that and understand what those recommendations are and how they, how they speak to not just affordable housing and not just to lack of development, to over development, but also to something about keeping some of the qualities that make us love the Lower East Side and Chinatown. So they really speak to the plan is by district because there's different cultures in some of the different districts. So the plan calls for, and correct me, Zishan, if I'm wrong, calls for protecting the cultures and the way that those areas not look specifically, but that development with those in those areas doesn't change totally how those areas look, feel, and how the people within them experience them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. I've got one more question, then I also want to figure out the rest of the context to this. So how does the plan for these particular sub-districts compare to what currently is in place for the East Village between, I guess, well, I don't actually know the extent of that district. Is it all the way from Houston to 14th Street, or is it a smaller area that's been protected? Zushan, do you know the answer?
I want to see like Brian or Stephanie want to jump in.
I don't know the actual boundaries of the East Village zoning plan, but the way that it was rolled out is that there was a compromise involved, that it allowed more large scale development to go up on the avenues, and the side streets would be protected. So that's why on 2nd Avenue, you're going to see bigger developments go up, but and some of the small businesses have shut down, but on the side streets you see mostly preservation.
And it's north of Houston at that time when they do the East Village, and then they also excluded the nitre from protection. So that's also pretty obviously they try to just protect certain part of the neighborhood.
Gotcha. Thank you. So then, yeah, I also wanted to understand a little bit of the opposition to this plan. So this has been circulating for 10 years now, and it's not all, I assume it's not all just Mayor de Blasio being a fan of big development. There's some other sides to all of this. We have with us tonight a guest, Jan Lee, who you guys probably know, with the Chinatown Core Block Association. Jan, do I have that correct?
Yes, thank you.
And can you explain to us what doesn't work about this plan for you?
Well, I just want to give a little historical background. Myself, and there's another person who was on the Chinatown Working Group since its inception. Irving Lee is on the call, as well as a few other small property owners from Chinatown who are also on the call. I wanted to just sort of lay the groundwork about, what the Chinatown Working Group was in its inception and what it is today are two very different things. And when we talk about representation, we have to be very careful. And I advise your club to be cognizant of what representation in communities really means. I'm also part of a small property owners group that represents many, many dozens of properties in the lower Manhattan area. Specifically in Chinatown, a number of Chinese property owners. And we have mixed use buildings, tenements, typical tenements that you see with commercial tenants on the ground floors. And one of the issues that we had constantly had to work with on the Chinatown Working Group was the fact that the property owners were always on as seemed to be contentious. I mean, they always were seen as contentious adversaries, while the actual truth was that we really wanted to see a clear way for everybody to work together. And I know that the mission is for equal protection of Chinatown with regard to large buildings being built, which aligns with small property owners that with really, really huge out of scale buildings being built, that strains the resources for all of us, including those who are small property owners and our tenants who are predominantly low income. Where we started to part ways was the restrictions put on small property owners with regard to how we would have our storefronts or the economic diversity within the neighborhood. Those things were also part of the Chinatown Working Group in the sense that there was a real hardcore move to landmark all of Chinatown. So we're talking about varying times of prosperity and times when really lean times like they are now, all of those things seem to be, as we're looking at COVID situation now, seem to be very outdated. You know, I wouldn't think of landmarking Chinatown while we can't even keep our buildings in the hands of small property owners. But those things were thrown in part and parcel of the protection of zoning and large buildings. And so we really got bogged down into a tremendous amount of details about how small property owners would be restricted in their use of their buildings. And so in that interim, you know, the Extel company was able to build their 80-story building, which was an aberration. Nobody's saying that that should be the norm. But the ineffectiveness of the Chinatown Working Group is what caused some of the real huge stakeholders in the community to pull out of it. The Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association, one of the largest small property owners in Chinatown, has removed themselves, as well as Lin Sing Association. And, you know, I checked recently, Confucius Plaza is listed as a member, but they actually are not active and participating in this. So just naming those three, aside from the small property owners, we're talking about not real strong stakeholder advocacy and investment in this plan. And I think there's a number of reasons. I'm not going to speak on the other organizations about why they pulled out, but the fact that there isn't the buy-in from the investment, the long-standing traditional stakeholders is something to understand, because those stakeholders actually have an extremely deep knowledge of what is happening to their properties today. And so we're looking at a plan that was finished in 2014. It was rejected in 2015. But here we are in 2021, trying to find our way out of the COVID situation, where we're dealing with extraordinarily low incomes that are coming in, yet the city is still demanding their pound of flesh from small property owners, with no reduction in the rates, no reduction in the penalties if you miss your deadlines. The tax deadlines are still fixed, they're carved in stone. All the small property owners are still subject to lien sales and still subject to foreclosures. None of those things are really baked into this plan. Those are the things that us as small property owners bring to legislators. And that's what we've been doing since March 2020. We've met with over 75 legislators, from city council to the assembly, to the Senate, and even to the controller, talking about these issues and how they face, how these things are facing small property owners and small businesses who are essentially our tenants. And so without any of this current information and how it can be addressed, I think that there's a long way to go. Which is to say that we are not going to not go to meetings. We've been so deeply involved with our legislators, between Yuli New and Kavanaugh and Margaret Chin and Nydia Velasquez. We're meeting with them all the time, including the Housing Chair Committee of both the Assembly and the Senate. There's only limited amount of time that we can invest in getting ourselves involved in so many different things. So we find that what's really important to us right now is to seek candidates that are going to amplify the issues that are in front of us, and also meet with legislators so that we can help them carve out the right legislation that will work for all of us. So we're not against reasonable development, but we also have to be very cognizant that we can't be looking at plans that put undue pressure on small property owners in the past, but particularly right now. So those are just some of our concerns that I want to bring to the forefront.
Yeah, thank you. But I guess I'm actually a little confused then, because it sounds like to my ears, and I'm not as well versed in all of this stuff. I'm hoping to be educated tonight. But it sounds like you're talking about two completely different sets of topics. On the one hand, we were just presented with a plan that was about reasonable development and making sure that there's room for truly affordable housing, and resisting the kind of development that leads to displacement. I didn't hear you talk about any of those things. Do you feel like those are we just don't have time for those problems because there are bigger problems in front of us? Or do you disagree with those goals?
Well, I'm sorry I didn't make myself clear, Jeremy. For the most part, we are aligned with the Chinatown Working Group sentiment that overdevelopment hurts all of these small property owners and small businesses in the neighborhood, in the sense that it puts a strain on all of our resources, our limited resources. And also, as Zishan had correctly pointed out, can effectively raise our taxes even more. What is dangerous, though, is to not lose track of the existing extant housing that is owned by small property owners that has to be baked into any plan as a priority. Because we can look at, this is one of the flaws of the de Blasio administration, that they keep talking about adding on affordable housing, but not providing enough subsidy and abatements and ways that the extant 940,000 units of rent regulated housing in New York City can be addressed. Either prioritize that or concurrent. We're looking at keeping our eye on future development, which is the pouring of concrete, breaking up both sidewalks and going through long ULURP processes and getting tied up deeply into that process. Meanwhile, we're seeing property owners across the city selling their properties and moving away because they're just not being included in these discussions. So we're very concerned about the destabilization of extremely low income housing and the destabilization of small property owners and what that means to small businesses. So they are tied together.
Yeah, this is Irving Lee speaking. I was with Jan in the Chinatown Working Group approximately 6 to 7 years ago. And the fundamental premise behind the Chinatown Working Group was flawed to the extent that it assumed that the property owners in Chinatown would become a vehicle for gentrification. And they did this by lowering our ability to, lowering the height that was restricted to begin with and make it even lower. And it made it much more difficult to develop an economy in Chinatown, and discriminated against the property owners and businesses in Chinatown. That's why so many businesses left the Chinatown Working Group, because it didn't address the issues properly. And while this was being done, we noticed that a huge skyscraper was being built. Even though it was an issue that could have been an issue, it wasn't even addressed in the Chinatown Working Group. A tremendous building was being built in front of our eyes. And you're talking about gentrification. Why wasn't that being addressed? Wow. Because there was basically a white property owner that was building it. That's why it wasn't being addressed. So there was a particular issue that was not being dealt with that should have been dealt with at the time. So zoning itself doesn't address the issues. And by the way, if you look at the Chinatown Working Group plan, it allows for greater development in the lower East River waterfront, where the Extel building is. So why is that not an issue? Why is that allowed to happen there as opposed to other parts in the area? Is that double standard already exists within the document?
Jeremy, I can only surmise that what Irving is talking about is that, it is true that the Extel Tower unfortunately was built, but there was a lot of time spent on minutia that really dragged the Chinatown Working Group into a place that was a stalemate. And I think that the danger here is that we get drawn into this thing again, that really a lot of people who are stakeholders did not feel was an efficient process from its inception, which is not to say that there is no need to have a plan. Everyone agrees that there needs to be a plan, but I just caution you that it doesn't have the backing that is being portrayed either on the website or in general.
Well, I'd like to try to bring this back actually to a conversation about what is going to be happening going forward and how we as a neighborhood can approach development that's going to happen. I'll be honest with you, this conversation suddenly now sounds to me like we're talking about minutia, and we're talking about 10 years of history and people who have legitimately a long conversation that they've already been having that I'm trying to step into in a way that feels a little awkward. So first of all, I apologize for my own lack of history there, and what might feel like an intrusion into a conversation that's going on legitimately in other neighborhoods. But I would like to kind of understand what folks from Grand Street Dems represents this very particular section of the Lower East Side, and I would be remiss if I don't admit to you all that I live in a 20-story building that probably any of these plans would reject, and I enjoy views from my 18th story windows. So my own place in all of this, and this is true for many of us probably on this call, is a little awkward and weird. But I'd like to have some sense, even given all of that, what stance we can take to make sure that some of the values we're talking about, true affordability, the lack of displacement, opportunity for small business owners, vibrant communities. I mean, I feel like these are all the kinds of things that we seem to be agreeing on. And maybe without getting into the weeds of the particulars of a 100-page document, what are the things that we need to do now to make sure that we can move together in that direction? Stephanie, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to clarify something. So obviously the plan has a long history, and it has different iterations of members over time. And so you can imagine that when a plan is created some 12, 13 years ago, you fast forward to now, you're going to have different members, different stakeholders and ideas of what the plan should be. There might be some groups that decide they don't want to be part of the Chinatown Working Group anymore. They have a different idea. They have different goals. But what we can tell you is that in terms of stakeholders and support for the plan, there are thousands of people who support the plan. Back in 2008, the coalition had gotten 10,000 plus signatures on a petition demanding that they be included, that Chinatown and the Lower East Side be included in the East Village rezoning protection, and that after Chinatown and Lower East Side were subsequently excluded by the politicians at the time, the people had rallied for the Chinatown Working Group plan to cover all of Chinatown and the Lower East Side. And there was broad support in the community, not just from community groups, but from individuals, workers, residents, and small businesses. And this past year, the Chinatown Working Group plan garnered over 6,000 signatures on another petition calling for the passage of the Chinatown Working Group plan. So it is not a plan that lacks support. People all across the community of different races, incomes, and interests support the plan.
Hey, Bill, you've had your hand up a bit. Do you want to add something here?
Yeah, there's a couple things I just want to point out. When people, someone mentioned before, like it's going to pull down the height limits in zoning. That happens, for those of you who don't know, there are no height limits in New York City zoning. Basically, that's why we have these super talls, because what they do is they buy the air rights from surrounding lots. They don't build in those lots. They can build up as high as possible. There's a lot of loopholes. So as long as engineering allows them to build up, they can build up. So to say that this is like down zoning or putting height limits when there's no height limits, yes, there would be applying some standards. I only moved here a few years ago, so I wasn't involved in the all the back and forth in developing the plan. It sounds like some of the objections, though, is that it's like the excellent is the enemy of the good. We want it to be a perfect plan. And as Jeremy says, some of the objections might be because of concerns of other parts of the community that it doesn't address directly, but I think it would address indirectly. I think it's worth going through the plan because there's a lot of assumptions of what the plan does. I mean, it's a long document, but if there's like certain buzzwords you want to look for, you can actually, search it for those things, like words like landmarking or height restrictions. So it's like worth doing that. It's worth considering because without doing anything, I mean, Jan mentioned, okay, well, the Extell building went up while all this back and forth was going on. Well, that might have happened, but I've only been seeing the folks around the Chinatown Working Group plan organizing about the super towers now. I haven't seen other people doing it. So I'm not sure who's asleep at the wheel, but they're not. So I don't think we can blame them for the Extell debacle. I think that, again, it's not going to be a perfect plan for every sort of group in the community, but for the basic idea that we have to have rational zoning for working people. And who are working people? A friend of mine says, if you only make money when you're awake, you're working class. So for working people, I think this plan starts to give us a start. And so again, it can't be perfect because we're going to find things that have to be amended. But our last zoning in the city was 1970 something. It has to be fixed. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Caitlin, thanks for coming tonight.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry, Chris would be here, but he's actually on a candidate forum. So if you hear him in the background, that's what's going on. Yeah, we just wanted to chime in. Obviously, the Chinatown Working Group plan is the crux, of our campaign. It's something that we campaigned on in 2017 as well, when we lost by just 222 votes. So I think that also shows that there's a very clear mandate in support of this plan. To talk about some of the preservation issues, I totally understand why that's a concern, especially for small property owners and especially in Chinatown. Right now, everything in the plan is actually a recommendation. Our secretary, Rob, loves to point out to us that nothing in the plan is completely set in stone at this point. Obviously, there's a lot that the Chinatown Working Group as it currently exists would find, non-negotiable. But, historic preservation of individual buildings is not the crux of what we're trying to do. Like, we're trying to stop displacement, we're trying to stop speculation, which, as people have mentioned on this call, is actually a really uniting factor when you look across the Lower East Side in Chinatown. Yeah, and I think, our meetings happen every first Monday of the month at 6:30. They're open to everyone. A lot, an increasing number of people have joined recently, especially most recently East River Park Action, and also, we've been in talks with people in the Seaport Coalition. So there's a lot of momentum behind this, and we hope. Downtown Independent Democrats recently joined. So we hope that Grand Street Democrats will be a part of this because, once Chris, if Chris wins the primary, we have a lot of work to do to get this plan into shape so that it's ready to be passed the day that he's in office. Everyone on this call is going to have a seat at that table. And if Grand Street Democrats joins the Chinatown Working Group plan, that would just, really, obviously we would give you guys a seat anyways, but that would really, help the conversation when we hopefully get to that point.
Thanks, Caitlin. Naomi, how are you?
Hi. Thank you so much, Caitlin. That was really helpful. Yeah, I'm really excited to hear from the Chinatown Working Group here tonight. And I've been part of the group from a bit of a distance, but also really supportive of efforts to, sorry, 5-year-old melting down in the background. I hope you can hear it. Efforts to, think about our role in challenging displacement and fighting for truly affordable housing. When you said, Jeremy, like, we live in these buildings that are quite tall. If you think about the contextual built environment, sometimes I think about what our position might have been if we had lived, if we had been in the neighborhood having these questions when buildings were cleared, and what position do you take on displacement and pushing people out of a neighborhood when you can. So we live in these tall buildings now, but I think we have an opportunity to take a good stand in terms of thinking about being the part of the fight for truly affordable housing and protecting people's homes.
Thanks. We've got about 8 more minutes on this conversation. I think, by the way, we're not voting on this proposal tonight. This is really the beginning of us making sure we're educated on this and figuring out how to approach it all. So I just wanted to make that clear to those of you who are presenting opposing sides here.
Yeah, this is Irving Lee again speaking. The question of the double standard that exists between the Lower East River waterfront development and its ability to expand and have different type of buildings as opposed to the other districts, especially sub-district A, which is where I'm at. Why is there such a big difference between the two? Why? I mean, it's clearly discriminatory.
Which sections of the map are you talking about?
Sub-district D, the Lower East River waterfront, versus sub-district A, for example.
So you're asking, why does D allow higher buildings than A?
Well, the horses already left the barn.
Well, I don't.
They've left the barn already. They already have a building up there. It's called the Extel building.
Well, it doesn't sound.
Should have been addressed then.
It doesn't sound to me like anybody in this meeting is a big fan of the Extel building.
Well, of course, because it's after the fact. It's already been done. And the bottom line is zoning itself is not going to resolve the issue of affordable housing. It's making sure providing resources to maintain the affordable housing that exists. Much of NYCHA housing is vacant because it has to be rebuilt.
So I'm sorry, Irving, what would your proposal be?
What my proposal would be? It would not be strictly on zoning. It would be issues that pertain to providing subsidies for both the landlord and the tenant to make sure there's viability in the business.
So
if there's no viability in the business, then housing would fail.
I'm not sure.
If I could just briefly answer, and I know that you have a very limited amount of time, Jeremy. One of the things that we talk about with our legislators is very, very, it's almost week to week how much involvement we have been investing with our legislators to make sure that housing vouchers are available, that the $1.3 billion that's coming from the federal government is distributed to low-income renters in need, and right into the hands of small property owners who need that money to pay their taxes. And so these are some of the initiatives that we're pursuing at the moment. But
why can't both of these things happen?
Which is not to say that, well, the problem is that there's a lot of focus on the building of new buildings, which currently in the environment that we're looking at with New York City, Manhattan going on 7-8% vacancy, I think is a little bit ambitious to think that building is happening at the rate that it was when the Chinatown Working Group was founded, and which is not to say that when it was founded, there was a tremendous amount of construction going on, but to really understand the climate that we're in today, what we're about to do is lose tons of small property owners. Probably a year from now, when I'm talking to you, many of the small property owners in my neighborhood may not even be here if they don't have meaningful abatements and tax breaks and rent vouchers. So we would like to see any advocacy group to work on these issues that are really week to week, month to month right now. That will preserve housing.
I mean, so let me move on. A couple of people have their hands up.
Sure.
Fanny.
Yeah, hi. So yeah, I've been following this plan for like a couple of years now. I mean, I don't know that much of the history, but I just want to say that, this plan covers not only Chinatown, keep in mind it covers other areas in Lower Manhattan too. I mean, Subdistrict B, which is all the NYCHA complexes in East Village, this protects them, especially with the threat of privatization coming. So it's not just Chinatown that this plan covers. And I just want people to keep that in mind. And, and this plan is about, it's about affordability, and it's about, displacement. So I just want people to keep that in mind.
Thanks. Hey, Marion, do you want to add something here? We're almost out of time, but please.
Yeah, I'm really listening. And Jeremy, like you, I haven't been in the whole history. And so there's a conversation that I know we're jumping into. And Jen, everything that you're saying resonates to me. And I don't think it's an either or conversation. It seems to me it's a both and conversation. And what I would like to encourage us to think about as we start to think about our stance as a club on this proposal is, how do we make both and happen? How do we protect the small businesses that continue to exist, knowing that they're dropping in numbers? And that's part of what I was talking about earlier that makes the culture in this neighborhood kind of so appealing to so many of us, and take on development and zoning. And I think if we continue to fight about making it either or, we're going to have another Extel, and we're going to have 4 towers, and we're going to have Go Broom with every single variance that's possible in its development, so that if we don't come together somehow and take control of our community, then the mayor will, and the developers will. So either we can find a way to talk to each other and come to some agreement, or we can allow them to do what they're doing, and then we won't have to make a decision because it will be out of our hands.
Yeah, I think that's well put. Thank you, Marion. Zishan, you asked if you could have a minute also here.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I think Marian pretty much said what I want to say, because I cannot really respond to every comment here. But look, like who is our common enemy here, right? And of course, I think the issue I mean, that's exactly how, why we should folks should come to the meeting, and then we can talk, and then even before afterwards. About some of the issue that was raised, but in general I think Marian pretty much spoke what I wanted to say. Thanks.
I guess I've got time for, there's one other hand up, but I don't know who this is. Joanna?
Yeah, hi, sorry. I just had a quick question. I know it was said earlier that preservation is not a major issue for the Chinatown Working Group, but so I'm a small property owner, 40 plus years, my parents. And it's really important to me if part of the resolution is to landmark buildings within the zone, because, to other people, it might not be a big deal. And to other people, it might be great. Oh, they want to, save and keep this feel, of Chinatown. Again, like, don't get me wrong, I was like born and raised and still live in the area, but landmarking adds so much burden, financially on small property owners, that it would just basically push out, further push out small property owners, and probably will have like the opposite of effect of what the plan wants. Like we have 2 retail tenants that we've had for over 30 years. We have the small businesses that people want to keep. But part of that reason is because, we work with them. But things like landmarking and things like property taxes make it especially hard for us to keep holding on. And, we are part of the reason why, like, some of these small businesses are able to hold on because of this relationship that we have. So I know it's not a major point for Chinatown Working Group, but it's a major point for like people like me. So I just wanted clarity on that specific question.
Yeah, I
So
appreciate
on
that.
that note, perhaps that's one thing that could be taken out of the Chinatown Working Group's discussion, and then that would welcome more property owners to be, you know, joining on to see that there's a space in there for them.
Well, that's that's super helpful actually, and I like that we're kind of ending on a note of things we might be able to all agree on going forward. Look, there's a ton more of this that I would like to talk about, and I hope we will again. But that's the time we have for that this topic this evening, and we've got another guest coming up now for 8 o'clock. So thank you guys, Stephanie, Zishun, thank you, Jan, Irving, for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And I'll probably come back to all of you with some questions and to try to figure out how we can hook into all of this again moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So our next guest tonight is Erin Hussein. Erin, I see you joined the room just a minute ago. Are you there? Erin has recently announced her campaign for City Council in District 2. So this is, Erin would be running against Councilwoman Carlina Rivera. She announced just recently, so we weren't able to include her in all of our candidate interviews over the last couple of months, but I did want to give her a chance to introduce herself to us tonight and see if she can answer a few questions. So Erin, hi, nice to meet you. Thanks for coming. If you want to just kind of give us your spiel for about 3 minutes, and then folks, if you've got questions and you want to raise your hands, we'll get through some questions for Erin as well. Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. I just want to, let me start by saying thank you to Grand Street Dems for allowing me to speak at this meeting, and to all of you for giving your time to listen to me. I particularly want to thank Jeremy and the entire executive board, and Carolyn Lasko and Lee Berman for allowing this to happen. I know it's somewhat unusual, and I really appreciate this. My name is Erin Hussein. I came to New York City in 1988 for college and then for law school at Columbia. And this has been my home ever since. I first lived in the district on 6th Street between 2nd and 3rd. And then for the past 2 decades, I have lived in the Stewart House, which, if you know the Astor Place area, it's the big 1-block white brick building between Kmart and Grace Church. I was elected to the board here of the building my first year that I lived here, and I've been the president of the board for close to 2 decades. I am an incredibly hands-on president. I hold frequent town halls, provide complete transparency, and anyone who wants my email can have it. I have over 700 tenants, 25 employees, all union employees, an $11 million operating budget, and this year we have a $10 million capital budget. This year we're doing facade work, replacing spalling concrete in our entire garage floor. We're doing a hallway redecorating and replacing our entire roof with an upgraded roof with state-of-the-art insulation to help us control our energy usage. I've also spent countless hours over the past nearly 2 years on a project to install solar panels on our roof to shift some of our energy use to renewable energy, and also to try to create a battery storage, to create some resiliency for the building, something that I think all of us have been looking for after Superstorm Sandy. Solar storage allows us to have resiliency without further relying on fossil fuels. So it's been very exciting. So for all of these projects, I attend every meeting, read every document, I ask lots of questions, and then I turn back to my tenants and I lay everything out for them, and I do the hard work of reaching consensus. This is the exact same way that I will operate as your council member. I will start out by meeting community stakeholders in every corner of the district. I have already started that process. I started that process in early December. It took me a little bit longer. So it took me a little longer to get the campaign up and running and announced. But regardless, I would start again from scratch, meeting community stakeholders in every corner of the district. I will listen And I will learn to come to know what is working well in each neighborhood and how I can be of service to improve what is not. I will get to work pursuing legislation when appropriate, conducting oversight, and holding the feet of the agencies to the fire. And then I will come back time and again to the community to explain what I've been up to and seek feedback. I will hold regular town halls around the district, and I will take live questions, not pre-populated questions from anyone who wants to ask. When City Hall opens up again, I can continue to include a virtual component to all meetings to make all meetings more accessible. This district is so close to City Hall, there's no reason for me not to be walking the streets of our district on a regular basis. Not everyone in the district will agree with everything I do, but I will be transparent and accountable to you. This is not what we are getting with our current council member. No one's holding city agencies accountable. There's very little trust and a very small amount of transparency. And I see that there are some questions, and I definitely want to get to your questions, but I just want to let you know, I am not shy. I'm not shy to call anyone to ask why something is happening. And I'm also not shy to then turn around and explain to somebody why something is happening. I know that not everyone is going to be thrilled at all times. That's just not the way the city works. But my job is to listen and to learn and to build consensus and to explain and to earn your trust so that you can trust that what I'm explaining is true. Should I start to call in people?
No, I'll go ahead and do that. Thanks.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's fine. Let me just, I'm going to ask a couple of questions just to start us off. What, outside of Stewart House, what have you been involved in the community?
I sit on a council called the CVCA, the Central Village Co-op Alliance, which is board presidents from around this Astor Place area. I think last count there were 16 of us. We don't always get to every meeting. I have been very involved with Grace Church, which is the church across the street from where we live. Many hours of community service there. And then, you know, I will be honest with you. I mean, I have a full-time job. I have 2 children, and I devote a lot of time to this building. And I like to describe this building as a one-block neighborhood. It's given me a lot of practice in community building, in consensus building, in governing, and also seeking re-election every 2 years, which, you know, some years is not so certain, but I've consistently gotten re-elected. So,
how many residents are there?
We have over 700, and we're actually unusual in that really a lot of us are here. You know, not as many people left during the pandemic, and we really have a pretty full building right now.
Cool, thanks. Mary Jo, I saw your hand up first. Go ahead.
My first question is, it's a multi-part. Why do you want to run for this position? And then if you are elected, will you step down as president of your board? And how does it affect your full-time job?
Yes, I would step down as president of my board. You know, I have a very active board. It's a very good board. There's definitely a succession plan, as there always should be with any good board. I am working my full-time job while I am running this campaign. I'm fortunate to have an excellent campaign manager who is also very hands-on, and I think he's on here somewhere. And I apologize, the last question was, why do I want to run? Well, I ran the first time 4 years ago. Many of you may know or may not know. I was not exactly a household name, but I ran because I was very concerned about one particular issue, 2 particular issues 4 years ago. One being overdevelopment pressure that we have in these corridors of the district, starting at University Place, really 5th Avenue, University Place, and then going over to 3rd Avenue. The zoning is outmoded. It's from the 60s, and it encourages large-scale commercial buildings and hotels. And this neighborhood has always been sort of on the knife edge of mixed use, and it's fantastic and we love it. But the push to turn this neighborhood into Silicon Alley was very concerning to me and to my residents. And so the second issue is closing the small businesses. The 3rd Avenue and 2nd Avenue have just been in University Place, which really are in 8th Street, which is sort of on the edge of the district up here. You know, they've been very vibrant, very vibrant areas. And, you know, it's just storefront after storefront was closing. And so those are really the 2 big issues that I saw 4 years ago. And then, so I dove in and I ran, and I learned very quickly that when you have 2 young children, it's very hard to do that. And I met one of my fellow candidates, Jorge Vasquez, whom I dropped out and endorsed. I was very impressed. I still am impressed with Jorge every single day. And I'm very proud that I had the opportunity to endorse him in the race. You know, then you go and you vote, and then you think everything is going to work out. And it very soon became apparent that it wasn't going to work out. Carlina Rivera voted in favor of the tech hub without getting any of the protections for the neighborhood that she promised on the campaign trail. And then that was just the beginning. There was a rigged hearing for the Small Business Job Survival Act. And then a lot of challenges with the 14th Street busway up here. People from my building would write to her, they wouldn't get any responses. And then, you know, it just sort of became this drumbeat of non-responsiveness, more development pressure, more buildings, now in particular, even buildings that have been landmark buildings are under pressure to be torn down and destroyed and replaced with super talls. And about a year ago, I started to really realize how frustrated the district as a whole was with the representation that we were having. And I just assumed that someone else would raise their hand and run, particularly because there had been just such a robust slate last time. And then I started to realize in November, when I sat in on a couple of the calls for some of the one of the other clubs, that no one else was going to run. And so at that point, I pulled out my contacts and I got in touch with everyone, including most of the people that I ran with last time. I just reached out to all the community stakeholders that I knew. I asked people to introduce me to other people. And I just kept hearing the same thing over and over again. In every corner of this district, people are frustrated. I came to know Pat from the East River Park Action and learned a lot more about what was happening in the park. It just felt like someone had to run. And so when I realized it was not going to be anyone else, I realized it was going to have to be me. And so that's why I'm here today.
Let's see if we get a couple more questions in. Tommy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's sort of to piggyback on what you said. And, you know, it's pretty late to get in the race. All the clubs have endorsed. Money has been raised by a lot of candidates. What do you believe is your strategy to win given this late start? And, you know, I'd like to hear that.
I would not have gotten into this if I didn't think that I could win. And I spent a lot of time talking to people in various places in the district, just like I'm talking to you right now. You know, it's a little bit different because you can come into people's apartments and people's homes via Zoom. And so that's been a big part of my campaign strategy is to talk to people over Zoom, sometimes over the phone, but over Zoom, and then always ask, you know, is there anyone else that you think would like to meet me? I think it's going to be a lot of word of mouth. And in terms of raising money, I am raising money and I will meet the threshold, the matching funds threshold. I don't think that this is going to be a race where a lot of money needs to be spent. We have under 4 months left. There's not going to be a lot of outside activities. And so I think that in terms of raising money, I think that the amount of money that I raise will be plenty for me to get my name out there and talk to people.
Keen, can you take the last question for us, please?
Right. I want to know where your kids are in school, and I want to know where your full-time job is. What specifically, and if there are choices you're making in those or whatever.
Certainly. So my daughter right now is in high school. She's at Brearley, which is an all-girls school on the Upper East Side. Before Brearley, she was at Grace Church School. And the reason for that is that she was so low on the wait list. We moved into this building because we intended to raise a family here, and we just fell in love with PS 41. And then my daughter was part of that crazy baby boom year from 2004, 2005. And she was so low on the wait list at PS 41 that she wasn't going to get a spot there. And fortunate because we live across the street from the church, and it's our church community, and friends of hers from Sunday school were going there. And so she was able to go there. It's not a choice that we wanted to make. We desperately wanted her to go to PS 41, which we think is an excellent public school. The reality is that there should be more seats. There should be more seats across the city. I shouldn't have had to make that choice, but unfortunately I did. My son's a completely different situation. He has special needs, and so he goes to a very small special needs school. Again, it's a private school. I wish that he could go to a public school. The city is not fantastic at providing opportunities for children like my son, and which is heartbreaking because I would love nothing more for him to be in a big classroom with a lot of kids and a playground. But unfortunately, that doesn't work. I work at Columbia University. I do alumni relations. I was a lawyer for many years. I mentioned I went to law school at Columbia. I was a lawyer, and then I stopped practicing law when I had my daughter. Then just recently, a couple of years ago, went back to work at Columbia. My children were getting older. I just had an opportunity to go there and work as a fundraiser. And now I work in alumni relations.
Thank you. There are other good schools besides PS 41.
Okay, thanks.
Public schools.
And they have seats.
With seats. My grandchildren.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Erin, I'm glad you could join us tonight. And we'll all be watching this over the next couple of months. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much. If any of you want to talk to me further, my website is erinhusseinnyc2.com. You can also reach me at erinhusseinnyc2@gmail.com. If anyone wants to talk to me further, ask me more questions. If there's anyone else that you think that would like to meet me, I would just love to meet as many people as possible. And again, I appreciate very much this opportunity. I'm thrilled that I was able to speak to you all tonight. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thanks very much. So for our last part of this meeting, we have to discuss some civil court candidate endorsements. We need to do this like we've done our other endorsements, which is to ask, and Christian is here. I guess he wants to say a quick hi.
Oh, no, I didn't know if you want me. I want to say hello to everybody, and also I just want me to leave. Is what
I think that's right. So this part of the meeting we're going to do just for members. Chris, I know you're a member, but you're also a candidate. So I think
totally.
we'll ask you to sit down so we can discuss this stuff. And thanks, Chris. And anybody else, if you're not a member,
have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. If you're not a member, this is a chance to step out of the Zoom